Again, it's about the 2008 financial crisis. And if you've seen The Big Short, then this is the follow-up movie you watch, because Big Short gives you a larger idea of what happens and what were some of the key players and what were some of the key issues and people who saw it coming. This movie specifically traces one firm who was at the center of it all, Lehman Brothers, and it starts off with the start of the crisis and how a couple of people at the firm first identified that this crisis is coming and this is the repercussion of it. In fact, this film is a conversation between individuals who are involved in this mess. So it doesn't simplify a lot of things for you. It leaves it up to the audience to actually get an understanding of what's going on. And if you don't understand the financial world as well, or the intricacies of it as well, then it takes you a while to understand. I mean, you do get a broader picture of what exactly is going on. And, there is a crisis, there is a problem. They ignored some things for a long time. They were reckless for a long time. And suddenly it's coming to hit them very hard.
Hi Deep, welcome to my podcast, which is called Spoiler Alert with me, Cinephile Sanket. So Deep, today we are discussing one of your other favorite films, which is called The Margin Call, which is written and directed by J.C. Chandor, and which stars a huge ensemble of actors like Kevin Spacey and Paul Bettany and Zachary, Quinto, Jeremy Irons, and many more actually. So first of all, Deepanshu, please, would you introduce this film just in 2 lines, actually?
Thanks, Sanket, for having me on your podcast again. Always a pleasure to speak with you. Again, it's about the 2008 financial crisis. And if you've seen The Big Short, then this is the follow-up movie you watch, because Big Short gives you a larger idea of what happens and what were some of the key players and what were some of the key issues and people who saw it coming. This movie specifically traces one firm who was at the center of it all, Lehman Brothers, and it starts off with the start of the crisis and how a couple of people at the firm first identified that this crisis is coming and this is the repercussion of it. And they were the first to kind of start clearing off some of the bad debts on their book, which of course then led to a larger contagion and the actual start of the crisis. So if you get a broader picture, a broader understanding of the crisis from The Big Short, then you watch Margin Call next to understand what were some of the specific problems. And in a sense, it gives you an idea of the toxicity of the assets that most of these banks were sitting on at an individual level. And then from there, you understand how all of these banks, one by one, started to kind of collapse. Of course, Lehman was the only one that actually collapsed and was finished by the end of it. Others were bailed out or survived. But this gives you an idea of how reckless the banks were, how reckless the individuals involved in this crisis were at a much smaller level.
Okay, but Deepanshu, so first, tell me, when did you watch this film for the first time? And I think back in 2011, you might have watched this in theater, or I think you might be a part of the markets as well. So what was your experience when you were actually part of this this system, and just tell me all about it? And obviously, since when you rewatch this as well, so what was the experience and then as well?
Absolutely. In fact, this is the first film that I saw after of the 2008 financial crisis. I mean, you'd seen some news items, you'd seen a couple of longish news stories and stuff on it, but this is kind of the first film that I saw based on the crisis. So I actually saw it before The Big Short, and that's why from experience I can tell you, for a better understanding, watch The Big Short first and then watch Margin Call. But it took a while to understand. I admit, even though I was part of the markets then, I didn't really understand everything first go. I had to watch it 2 or 3 more times. And of course, over the years, I've watched it several times over again to actually get a sense of everything that's happening. Because this film, unlike Big Short, which does a good job of explaining what exactly is going on and where exactly the failures were, either through the character or actually through the fourth wall, when they break it and they actually tell you exactly what is going on. This film doesn't do that. In fact, this film is a conversation between individuals who are involved in this mess. So it doesn't simplify a lot of things for you. It leaves it up to the audience to actually get an understanding of what's going on. And if you don't understand the financial world as well, or the intricacies of it as well, then it takes you a while to understand. I mean, you do get a broader picture of what exactly is going on. And, there is a crisis, there is a problem. They ignored some things for a long time. They were reckless for a long time. And suddenly it's coming to hit them very hard. But it's a very intelligent film in the sense that it does not simplify stuff for the audiences. It seems like an actual real conversation that people who are working in Wall Street would have with each other. It seems, or it shows the way this crisis would be handled. It doesn't over dramatize. That's what I love about this film. In fact, it actually underwhelms, because if you watch Wolf of Wall Street, if you watch Wall Street, if you watch other movies related to stock markets, that sense of giving you what's happening on the trading floor, that adrenaline rushing through everyone's on the phone, they're abusing each other, there's stuff going on all over. It does not fall into that trap. Right? It keeps it simple. A lot of it happens away from the trading floor. A lot of it happens at night. It's dull. The office is empty. You don't know what's really going on. There are 3 or 4 people who are watching a computer screen and trying to figure out, and then talking big numbers and VAR and margin and volatility index and financial modeling and all of that. And you really have to be in the markets or somewhere associated with the financial world to actually get a sense of everything. And this film does not do that for you. Instead, what it shows you is it's real people making these real decisions, even if they are playing with billions of dollars, or in this case trillions of dollars of money and assets. At the end of it all, there are people just like you and me who made a big mistake, who let their greed take over in a sense, and are now paying the price for it. And not only are they paying the price for it, they're going to make sure that everyone else pays the price for it. And there's very little moral dilemma about it. I mean, a couple of characters do come up with apprehensions of why we're doing this, but that is at an individual level. It's not like we're going to spoil everything for others. It's just that we'll spoil our relationship with others, and no one will deal with us again, or our careers will be in trouble. So in a sense, this is how money is, right? Money is impractical. Money is impersonal. Money does not care whether you're right or wrong. Money only cares about money, in the sense that you only care about your benefit. You only care about what next. You only care about the millions that you make. You don't care about the destruction that you leave in your path towards that success. And I think this picture captures that very well by not saying a lot of things. It just shows things the way as is. It lets you interpret it for yourself. It doesn't over dramatize. And I love that about it. And I do suggest that if you're watching it, pay attention. And if you don't get it, do give it another shot, because it really deserves that. It's a beautiful film, and it handles this complex topic very well.
Actually, so on your suggestion itself, I actually watched this film. I didn't knew about it much. I actually watched it. Okay, so let's watch a financial movie since you were suggesting it. So I watched it. I actually absolutely didn't understand a thing. Like you said that the Big Short actually spoon-fed us for some at some time, but this film didn't do well. I don't know. That's the reason I didn't like that much. But as you said correctly right now, that this film grows on like it grew on me as well. And I don't know, like I didn't understand any of the financial terms as well. Like what were they talking about? First of all, like I didn't knew what is the product the company was selling, and like I didn't knew about it, like sell it all and all those like main like all those like I think those lines I didn't knew about that. So but after like just listening to you that it's like more in the lines of like more in the timeline of the Big Short, I got to know that this film actually needs a second watch for me. Is that's the reason I'll also come back to this film after some years as well. But so first of all, if I wanted to ask you, like I'm actually not a financial expert since you are, can you explain what is margin call? Like I think it might be a financial term. Like
it absolutely is a financial term. Like I've said before in this podcast as well, in the financial markets, we like to complicate simple terms, right? So what is margin? let's understand what a margin is. A margin is a small percentage, a portion, a proportion of something large. So when I say margin or a margin call, what is essentially meant is, if you are trading, right? How does a financial system work? If you want to buy something worth 100 rupees, right? You can take your 100 rupees and buy something worth 100 rupees, right? Or you can leverage, right? You may not have those 100 rupees, but you can still trade something worth 100 rupees. How do you do that? You do that by keeping a margin. Now, what's a margin? A margin is a percentage of the total money that you want to trade with, right? So if you want to trade with 100 rupees, your broker will say, keep 25% margin with me, right? So you keep 25 rupees with the broker, and through those 25 rupees, you are trading worth 100 rupees, right? So there is a risk of 1:4. For every 25 rupees, at risk is 100 rupees, right? Now, let's say the trade goes in your favor.
Okay.
Right? You've traded worth 100 rupees. You've kept a margin of 25 with the broker. You get a 10% return on that. That 100 becomes 110. You get all of that back and you square off the margin with the broker.
Okay.
Right? The broker will settle the difference with you. He already has your 25 rupees. He trades worth 100 rupees for you, gets a profit of 10 rupees, keeps the margin or whatever is his charge, and returns the rest to you. Done. Right? But the broker knows that tomorrow, if you default on that 100 rupees, at least he has 25 rupees as margin, as safety. That's the broker's safety, right? For every 100 rupee trade that he does for you, he has 25 rupees of yours as safety.
Okay.
So margin is safety,
okay,
right? A margin is managing risk. All right.
Mhm.
Let's say the call goes wrong. You put 25 rupees with the broker, you trade worth 100 rupees, and there is a loss. There's a 10% loss. So effectively for the broker, the loss is 110, but he has that margin of 25 already with you. You have to pay the difference and you're squared off. That is essentially what margin is. Margin is safety that you've kept with the broker to trade a large amount. Now, margins can vary. For Indian markets, and actually you have to commend the Indian market regulator SEBI for that, we have very strict margin rules. All right. Some places it's 25%, some places it's 50%. There's also 100% margin, which means you can't trade worth more than what you have in your broker's account. Right. Depends for different financial products.
Okay.
So margin is a window of safety. If you buy a house, you take a loan worth 1 lakh rupees.
Absolutely.
You give some safety, right? Now that safety may be worth 1 lakh rupees of loan that you're taking, or that safety may be a little less, because it's also based on trust that you will repay your loan. If you don't repay your loan, whatever collateral that you've kept will be taken away. So your margin is your collateral that you keep with your broker.
Okay.
Now what happens is you build these. Now I've given 25 rupees and 100 rupees. These are small amounts. This is one individual.
Absolutely.
Put crores of individual together. Make that 100 rupees 1 lakh rupees. So you can imagine the value of trade that is happening, right? 1:4. For every 1 rupee of safety, you're trading worth 4 rupees, right? So imagine the leverage that is out there, right? Now, if the broker is not strict with maintaining that margin and your trade starts going into a loss, then he starts saying, boss, either you increase the margin because your trade is going into a loss. So you increase the safety that I'm taking for you by taking on the risk, or you cut your position and you square off the losses. So either you increase the margin. Let's say you've taken a 100 rupee trade, right? And now you're losing 20% on it, right? So the broker will say that the 25 rupees margin that you've kept with me, increase that margin to 50 rupees. So I know that even though you're losing money, my risk is safe with you. Or you cut the trade now and you settle the losses, right? There's only two things that can happen. Either in a bad trade, either you increase the margin or you cut the position, you square off position. This is called risk management. So those two guys in the movie, right? The main guy who gets fired, right? And then his two subordinates, and then the Peter who kind of figures out his model and says, this is what is going wrong. That is risk management. Now, every broker, every financial house, every fund has a very robust risk management system. Because a risk management system, or RMS, is responsible for telling you how much risk can you allow per person per trade. Or for a particular financial products, this is the amount of risk you can take. If the market does X, then you have to do Y. If the market starts to go down, you have to cut your position accordingly. If your market starts to go up, you have to manage your exposure accordingly. So they set the limits. They decide what kind of margin is needed. Of course, there's regulatory bodies that tell you, but within internal houses, within internal funds, they set the limits and they tell you, this is what is allowed, this is what is not allowed. So the moment it crosses that limit, your RMS kicks in, your risk management kicks in, and it tells you, okay, you've breached this limit. To get it back to normal, you have to do X, Y, Z. Either cut the position, increase the margin, reduce positions here, increase the leverage, whatever that may be. It depends for the RMS from house to house. So RMS, if you relate it to a person, is your conscience. Your RMS is telling you, this is right, this is wrong. You can do this, you cannot do this, right? And as individuals, the more you ignore your conscience for right and wrong, the more you regret it later on in life. And that is exactly what's happening in this movie, because they're giving a sense that RMS or risk management was telling them, right? Demi Moore's character, who's supposedly the head of risk management, is blamed a lot, but later on for ignoring some of the risk signs. But later on, we learn that she's been telling the top management about these things in her own way as well. But she also has been ignored by them. Because you're making so much money doing these trades, right? They took off these mortgage-backed securities, collateralized debt obligations, these artificial financial products that created out of real home loans of people that we learned in Big Short. It's the same financial product. What you learned in Big Short, it's the same financial product. How did it turn so toxic? Because all of us took risky trades on that, right? If your margin is 1:4, here your margin was 1:10. So for 10 rupees margin, you were doing 100 rupees trade. For 1 rupee margin, you were doing 100 rupees trade.
So it was like the bubble got bursted, right?
The bubble got bigger and bigger because you kept ignoring the risk, right? Because you're making so much money and you thought this will always continue to make money, you kept reducing the risk, right? So imagine that, on a 25 rupee margin, you're taking a 100 rupee trade. So you have a lot of backup available. That if the trade goes down by 10%, your margin will cover it. Goes down by 20%, your margin will cover it. But if on a 1 rupee margin you're taking a 100 rupee trade, then even at a 1% loss, right, your margin is at risk. There is no safety net after that. Your safety goes away because the moment your loss goes to 2%, there is no safety. The client has to pay, and if the client is not paying, the risk is on the broker's book. So the risk is on Lehman Brothers, the organization, because they took such a big risk without managing that risk properly. They took such a big position, leveraged position. What is leverage? Leverage is debt. Leverage is money that you don't have, right? Leverage is you give a certain security and you take a large amount of money for it. And you kept increasing that without increasing the security. So the moment that starts to go wrong, the moment market starts to go down, the moment people start to make losses, right? You don't have safety. If everyone's making a profit, you don't worry about safety because you net you're earning more than you're risking. But if you start making losses, then that safety net is not there.
But right? So what do you think that which firm or which event is this movie based on?
This is Lehman Brothers.
Okay, Lehman Brothers.
Lehman Brothers. The main character portrayed by Jeremy Irons, I think he's called John Tull over there. Is based on Richard Fuld.
Okay.
Right? Or Dick Fuld. Dick Fuld was the head of Lehman Brothers, CEO of Lehman Brothers when this crisis happened. Lehman Brothers was a 107-year-old financial institution. Was a major Wall Street investment bank. That was kind of dirty. You remember in Big Short, there is a scene where Brad Pitt, those two guys with Brad Pitt, they're trying to trade some securities and they mention Lehman Brothers and Brad Pitt says, yeah, Lehman will trade with everyone. And Lehman Brothers had this reputation. They were the biggest risk takers out there. And they had some of the most toxic assets on their book. I mean, stuff which was worth nothing, on which they were playing with the risk of worth billions of dollars. Right? And this is what, so in the movie, this is what Peter figures out with his boss's calculation, that the risk we have on our books, if the market goes down by just 20%, all our money would be wiped off, only by 20%. So imagine if the market goes down even further, what happens? Because that's the kind of toxic money that they were sitting on, right? And they already had managed to survive 3-4 times in the last 2 weeks when this problem had happened. but it's not going to be very long that they will survive,
Mhm.
right? Everyone, see, financial world is based on trust.
Mhm.
If you deposit ₹1,00,000 in bank,
Mhm.
you do it with the trust that you can take it out whenever you need it,
Absolutely.
right? But like you, the banks has lakhs of customers,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And all of them have deposited money with the trust that they can take it out when they need it. But at any given point, your bank will not have all of that money on its books,
Mhm.
right? Because there is no panic out there. You know that all your customers won't come in one day wanting to take all of their money out,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
But what if they do? What if they do? Then the bank cannot cover it.
Yeah.
That's where the trust comes in. You trust the bank to keep your money safe. The bank and the financial system is secure in a way that there is no panic that you need to take your money out all on the same day.
Mhm.
Right?
Right.
So the money in circulation is always based on trust. That trust comes from that you have taken some risk management. There is a certain measure of safety for the money that you're putting in, that you're not being reckless with it.
Mhm.
But they were being reckless with it. At the end, when Kevin Spacey and Jeremy Irons are talking,
Mhm.
right, when John Tull or Dick Fuld, who the character is based on, is talking, he says, what we are doing today is nothing new. This has been happening, and he goes back to the 16th century. He says this has been happening every few years, and this will keep happening every few years. There will always be people who make money, and there will always be people who lose money. And the percentages say the same. So if the population increases, there will be more people who will make money, but there will be equally more number of people who will lose money as well. Right? It's a zero-sum game. Not really a zero-sum game, but in the markets, we like to say it's a zero-sum game, which means that if for somebody to make money, somebody has to lose money. At the end of it all, it balances that out. It's like a balance sheet. That's what they say. But that's essentially what it is. I mean, people get greedy, they make the mistakes, they over level, they think this time it's different, they think the party will keep going on. And at the end of it, it all comes crashing down, because eventually you keep building on that debt, on that debt, on that debt, on that debt. In Big Short, how they show that house of that Jenga thing that collapses when you keep taking the supports out. That's essentially what happens all the time. So the financial market is built on trust, knowing that they will not do something beyond what is necessary or beyond what's safe. But they do that, they gamble it away, they build a large position, and at the end of it, they don't have enough assets to cover those losses, and it all comes collapsing. So here, it's noticed that one department has this problem, then they notice some more departments have this problem, then they notice this entire bank has this problem. But essentially what they're trying to convey is it's not just one department, one bank. It's the entire financial system that has this problem. And that's why you had that collapse in 2007, 2008 that you did.
Exactly. But what do you think about the endings? When Kevin Spacey's character is like digging something, and like he's, I think, burying his dog, right? So
Yeah.
what do you think about that ending? Like, I think he also gets like a message from his ex-wife as well, like about his son, something like I don't I didn't get it what exactly was that, but like
so this movie has, I mean, in cinema they use a term a lot called foreshadowing, right? You do something at the start or something in the middle that kind of gives you an indication of what's going to come at the end. So my understanding, again, I could be right, I could be wrong, but my understanding is that Kevin Spacey's dog in this movie, from the very first scene, that from the very first time that you're introduced to Kevin Spacey, it starts with him telling his subordinate Paul that that my dog is sick with liver cancer and is dying, right? And the dog here is meant to symbolize the financial system. The dog here is meant to symbolize the rot that lies within everyone who's a part of this financial system, right? And that you may love it, you may like doing it, you may be a part of it, and you may think you're doing the right thing, but you know that it's going to come to an end at some point or the other, right? And I think the dog is foreshadowing that. The dog is a symbol of the rot in the financial. The cancer that the dog has is a symbol of the rot in the financial system. The death of the dog also, in a way, symbolizes the death of the financial system. And why that scene of Kevin Spacey burying the dog at the end is important, again, my own interpretation of it, is just before that, a very angry Kevin Spacey goes to Jeremy Irons and he says, goes to his boss and he says, I want to quit. I'm done. Give me my money. I'm out. And his boss convinces him to stay for 2 more years.
Yeah.
His boss says, coming out of this crisis, there's a lot of money to be made, which means that you've just started a crisis and you're already thinking about the money that you can make out of it. You've just delivered tons of losses through toxic assets. You've done something wrong. You've been greedy. You've been risky. You've been inconsiderate to people. You've been inconsiderate with your clients' money. And just a few hours after that, you are already thinking about, okay, now what do I do to make money out of this opportunity, right? And Kevin Spacey stays. He stays back, right? So in a sense, Kevin Spacey burying his dog at the end, to me, is a symbol that the dog, while it symbolizes the rot in the financial system, and you've just ended this rot, it's died down. You are burying it and you're moving on again. And you're moving on to the next set of wherever this takes you. And that's, I mean, like Brad Pitt says in A Big Shot, the problem with Wall Street, the problem with capitalism is it boils everything down to a number. And numbers are meaningless, right? Number is emotionless. Number doesn't convey anything. And it really like hides the people behind it, and it makes you impersonal to all the suffering around you, right? So he suffers a little for his dog. Obviously, he loves his dog, and he's sad that she's died, and he couldn't do anything about it. And during her last moments, also he wasn't with her; he was at work. But it's time to move on to the next thing.
Exactly.
And I think that sort of is the larger message that we will not learn. It happened in 2008. It'll happen again sometime in the future. We will not learn.
Exactly. But as you said that, like you mentioned many times about the movie Big Short, and you also mentioned sometime that about the film The Wolf of Wall Street. Is this your favorite film about finance? Or are there any other films as well about like financial system?
There are a lot of them. I mean, I love Wolf of Wall Street. I love Big Short. I love Wall Street. There's Inside Man. There's tons of other movies that, you can watch. But like I said, what I like about this movie is it doesn't over dramatize, right? It does not show you people who are larger than what they are. The whole, the build up to the movie of realizing you have so much toxic assets on your book, all those big meetings that happen in the middle of the night, getting ready to get rid of all of these assets on your book, right? And the actual part of where they are doing the selling is just 4 or 5 phone calls that you hear of Paul Bettany speaking to different clients at different points of the day, one at 10 in the morning, one at 11, one at 1, one at 3, and one at the end of it all. The 4 or 5 calls that he does, it's less than 2 minutes. So the actual action of the movie, of them getting rid of these toxic assets, whatever that buildup is just 2 minutes of the movie, right? And there also, there's hardly any abusing. There's just like conversation between 2 people. Some of them figure out what's going on, some of them don't. There also, their greed takes over because they're getting these assets very, very cheap, not realizing that it's actually worthless, whatever that is, right? So that, I love the part that it doesn't over dramatize what happens on Wall Street. I love the part that a lot of people who have a certain perception of capital markets, of Wall Street, of Indian markets, will be disappointed by it because there's no drama to it. There's no glamorization of it. There's no, even though there are larger than life characters, you're not dwelling on them being larger than life. You're dwelling on them being idiots, right? Or being greedy, or just seeing them for what they are. That, they're numbers guys. They see risk reward. They see their profit, and that's what matters to them most. But at the end of it all, whether it's Kevin Spacey who says at the end, I hate what I'm doing, but I'm still doing it because I need money. Whether it's the guy, the risk management guy who they fired the previous day, who comes back because he knows he'll get the money. Whether it's all of these guys who agree to do everything, it's for the money. So there are no heroes out there, right? There are only villains. You choose which one suits you the most, It's Ryan Gosling's character in Big Short. He says, I've got my $50 million bonus. I was never in it to save you money. I was never in it to do good for the world. I just saw an opposite way or contra way of making money, and I did it. You were stupid. You let your money go to waste. I was smart. I earned money out of this.
Mhm.
And that's what all of these guys are doing at the end of the day anyway. So there's no moral redemption sort of at the end of this movie, because everyone is as corrupt as the other. It just depends which level of corruptness you are, or how much money you really have.
Also, this in the Big Short, in the end of the movie, Steve Carell's character actually says that like everyone will lose their job like because of all this. Like that quote is actually very relevant to this film, right? Like
yeah, it does. I mean, you're already seeing that, right? Like they're firing people on a daily basis, right? They're using these people to make money, and then they're firing them at the end of it, right? So there is, like I said, money is ruthless, right? And capitalism is ruthless. And this is not to say whatever the other forms of financial systems are better or worse. I don't know that. I'm not a judge of that. I just know what I see, which is that if you want to make it in this, then you need to be equally ruthless. Your moral values or your traditional understanding of right and wrong does not stand here. And that's what this movie says. I mean, it's just people trying to make money. Whether you like them, you hate them, it is what it is, right? And whether it works or not, that's up to you to decide. But believe me, if you were in their position, that's what the movie says, you would do the same thing. Right? You'd sit outside and you'll judge them for doing this, and you'll judge them for being corrupt and XYZ. But if you were in their position, you do the exact same thing, because at the end of the day, if money is your motivation, then this is how it plays out.
Oh my God. Yeah. But all right, sir. Thank you so much for coming to my podcast. Like it's a real honor. Like every time when you come to my podcast, like talking about a financial movie, I'm like I get to learn every new thing when we record a podcast. So thank you so much for coming to to my podcast, sir.
Thanks, Sanket. Thanks. Always a pleasure to speak to you about this.
Yeah, thank you, Deep. So I'll see you in another podcast video as well. So yeah, thank you so much and goodbye.
Goodbye. Thanks.